Welcome to this week's Wellness Wednesday. And for next week on Wellness Wednesdays, we are going to start a new format of kind of mini interviews with the nutrition practitioner team here at the Optimum Health Clinic on different aspects and elements of a functional medicine and nutrition approach to recovery from fatigue-related conditions. But for this week, this is another kind of prelude, let's say, towards those sessions. I want to talk about how healing is a partnership. And originally, I was planning this as a video on how to be captain of the ship of your own recovery. And I will do a video on that at some point. But I ended up getting more excited, I guess, about this content, because I think this is kind of critical, not just to the upcoming series of videos that we're going to start doing here, but also just generally, I think, for those of you that are following this vlog and podcast and are feeling, hopefully, one of my aims is feeling more empowered to play a more proactive role in your own healing and recovery journey. I want to talk a bit about how healing is a partnership and the relationship that we should have, the kind of optimal relationship between a patient and a practitioner. And there is going to be a part 2, I think, of this video that I've penciled for next week's Thoughtful Thursday, I think I put it down for, which is the reasons why you should not trust a practitioner. And there are certain warning signs, and I'm going to get into that because I think that would be really interesting. But for this week's video, healing's a partnership. And so the first few years that I had chronic fatigue, my grandmother was quite proactive in taking me to see different natural health practitioners. And for all of the issues that I had with my grandmother, I look back all these years later and I realized actually she was quite far ahead of her time in her understanding and her awareness around these things. So I would go in and I would read, testimonials from a naturopath or a nutritionist or acupuncturist or whatever. And they nearly always had a testimonial of someone that had chronic fatigue, and that person had a kind of miraculous healing journey. And I'd go in initially full of enthusiasm that this could be the answer. And then I would kind of crash in disappointment a few months later when it hadn't really made a difference for me. And like a lot of people after a while, I then had a kind of, people would think I was being negative. I wasn't negative. I was just afraid of being optimistic because I wanted to protect against that disappointment. But I was very passive in my relationship with the practitioners that I was working with. I was putting into action what I was told to put into action. It's not that I wasn't following through, but they were the expert and I was the kind of sufferer that was looking to them for their wisdom and their guidance. And after a couple of years of being ill, as I've talked about in a number of other places, I had a very important conversation with my uncle, which really shifted my perspective and my realization that if I wanted the circumstances of my life to change, then I was going to have to become responsible for changing them. That's a whole other theme. But part of that was as the years progressed from then, it was another 5 years from that point to making a full recovery, that I really started to evolve and change in the way that I related to the practitioners that I was working with. And what that looked like by the end of that path was that I was pretty much going as a nutritionist that I was working with for the last 18 months or so that I was ill. And I was, back in those days, it wasn't pre-internet, obviously, but it was pre kind of much information about this sort of thing on the internet. And it was certainly pre-social media. And I would read all the books in the area. I'd read her books. I would read other practitioners' related books. And I would go into consultations with with a written plan of what I thought we should be doing, what supplements I thought I should be taking, what doses I thought I should be taking, what tests I wanted. And I was a partner in the in the process, that I was taking full responsibility and I was looking for confirmation and kind of input, as opposed to going in as the just as the person that's like, you have all the answers. Now, I know that some practitioners, probably including Optimal Health Clinic, have got patients like that, and it can sometimes be a total pain in the ass from a point of view as a practitioner if you've got someone that is got lots of ideas that are actually misinformed, and you can spend a whole consultation just kind of explaining why they're not going in the right direction, trying to get them in the right direction. So sometimes too much of the wrong information can be a real time killer and can be a frustration. And, we have to be part of this partnership I'll come to in a minute, is we also have to listen. And I think sometimes I was a bit like a bull in a china shop, and perhaps in hindsight, I might have backed off and given more space to the practitioner. But so I'm not necessarily recommending people go to the extreme that I went to, but the point that I'm making is it's a collaborative relationship. And part of the reason why I think that is so important is the transformation, the change, both on the psychology side and on the functional medicine nutritional side. The change doesn't happen in the consultation. On psychology particularly, those moments of insight and awareness and shifts in state that happen in sessions can be really important. But the change is what happens all the other hours of the week and the month between, how we're able to put into practice what it is that we're learning. If our healing path is not a partnership, if we're not collaborative with the people we're working with, then we're dependent upon the change happening really within the consultation. And we're not really empowered in terms of what we're putting in place why we're doing it, if things are not working, kind of how to respond to that in a sensible, kind of considered manner. So information is power. If you're working with great practitioners, you need to listen and you need to trust their expertise and their experience, but you also need to trust your own body and the feelings and the information that's coming from there as well. And the better that relationship, the more collaborative that partnership, the more satisfying it is for us actually as practitioners, because we feel the empowerment of the person we're working with, and we know that things are more likely to be successful in that way. But also as a patient or as a client, or whatever word we're using, there is a sense of responsibility that's very empowering that comes from that as well. And we're able to, all those kind of micro decisions that are happening day to day. Do I rest? Do I do this thing? Do I increase the supplements? Have I had a reaction to this? Am I on an 80-20 principle with my food, or do I need to be really rigid? Like all of those momentary decisions that we're making, the more we're in a partnership, the more we're able to be empowered to have the information to respond in that way. So for this partnership to work, it needs to be honesty and there needs to be communication. We need to feel that we can be fully honest with the people, practitioner we're working with, but as practitioners, we need to feel that we can say it how it is, and that sometimes we're delivering challenging information in carefully chosen words. But fundamentally, the more there is honesty on both sides and the more there is communication, the better that therapeutic relationship works. It's also realizing that no one practitioner has all the answers. This is one of the things that I'm going to talk about in the video next week when I talk about reasons to avoid practitioners. But for me, as soon as if I meet someone, either in, through work or kind of socially or whatever, who is a practitioner of something, as soon as I hear words like cure or words like the answer, I immediately know that something is suspicious. And I say this as somebody who has worked in this field for 17 years, has 20 full-time practitioners. I don't for a second underestimate the depth of knowledge and experience that I and the team have. And I know we don't have all the answers. And that's part of what I was talking about last week of confirmation bias. The more that we can challenge our own confirmation bias, the more honest we can be about the limitations and what we can and what we can't do. So having an approach which is multifaceted and is recognizing there are different ingredients and different pieces to the jigsaw that can be really important. It was one of the reasons why I was very pleased to put out George's recovery story a few weeks ago on the original format of Soul Food Sunday, where he talked about how yoga was such an important piece. I thought that was important as a point to make, that sometimes the thing that helps process trauma and calm the nervous system may be something that we wouldn't expect, such as yoga. So healing is a partnership. We need to be proactive in our role in that partnership. There are no magical cures and answers, and we need to be suspicious for anyone, practitioners that start to talk in that sort of way. We need honesty, and we need communication and dialogue. We need to turn our ears on and listen to the practitioners we're working with, but also practitioners should be really listening to us. And, if they're skilled, they'll know what to listen for. And sometimes they'll shut down parts of dialogue because they can see that it's not necessary to get to the outcome, and it's eating up time, and they want to be protective of people's money and how time is used. We also need a multifaceted approach. There will be different ingredients in different ways at different times. So just in reflection, think about, how collaborative are you in the relationship that you have with your practitioner? Are you working as a team? Are you listening to them? Are they listening to you? Is there honesty? Are you taking responsibility for your part in the relationship? And I do want to really qualify, when I was talking about how I was going in with kind of armed with all this information, that's not what I'm talking about. I was obsessive in ways that weren't healthy at times in my wanting to understand. But it's going in, having thought about things, and going in with questions. If you've been given handouts, having read them. If you've been pointed towards further information, having taken the time to absorb that, and as much as you can within your capacities at this point in time. So tomorrow is Thoughtful Thursday, and do you know what? I'm going to make a change on the fly to the schedule. I was going to talk about what stops people healing for next week's for tomorrow's Thoughtful Thursday. I think I might bump that. I think tomorrow I'll do the 5 reasons not to trust a practitioner. I feel quite excited to do that video. I think there's some points I really want to make, and I think having that out there is going to be a useful resource, and it may offend a few people, but I think I'm okay with that. So I will talk to you tomorrow on Thoughtful Thursday here on Everyday Alex.